Was that result given to Cassie the real results? Meaning, did she really pass? Or was he protecting her, number one? Or number two, did he really care about the results and all he cared about was the amount of money? Because I can promise you he was paid a shitload of money by P. Diddy or whoever paid him in that organization to administer these polygraph tests. Welcome to Inside the Polygraph. I'm your host, David Goldberg, expert polygraph examiner. Join me as I and my guests break down the facts, fictions of polygraph testing, law enforcement, and so much more. Real cases, real conversations. The truth is always revealed inside the polygraph. Welcome back to Inside the Polygraph with David Goldberg. I'm your host, David Goldberg. Last night, when I was scrolling through the news, a current event obviously popped up, and I was blown away in reference to the Sean Combs P. Diddy federal trial that's currently going on. Obviously, what blew me away was the word polygraph. And when I heard that his former personal assistant was standing trial and she testified about taking a polygraph test, I keyed in on that even more so. And when I heard what she testified, I was so angered about what this polygraph examiner did. I was furious. And I listened intently, and let me tell you about this. Cassandra Clark, or Cassie as she is called, testified in reference to Sean Combs going to her apartment, knocking and banging on the door, and he woke her up and said to her, "You're coming with me. We're going to Kid Cudi's home. I'm going to allegedly kill him." And he presented a firearm in his hand when he knocked on her door. They allegedly went to Kid Cudi's home that evening, and Kid Cudi was not home. And this is her testimony. What happened then later on in her testimony, she said that Combs had accused her of taking some of his jewelry, a Cartier expensive diamond-encrusted bracelet and other jewelry, and his bodyguard had then taken Cassie to an abandoned office building, a skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, and inside this Midtown Manhattan skyscraper was a gentleman who was overweight, smoked, and administered polygraph tests over a 5-day period to her, whether or not she had stolen any of his jewelry. However, this alleged polygraph examiner, who there's multiple reports out there, was either retired FBI agent, which I truly doubt, or worked with or for the FBI, which again, possibly, but I also doubt, told Cassie prior to her being administered this polygraph test that if she did not pass this test, that she would be killed by P. Diddy and thrown into the East River. Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something to you in reference to that statement alone. If that is true, which I really believe that she did take this polygraph test, if that's true, that examiner is absolutely an unethical and scrupulous examiner, because now he is involved in criminal activity and is telling an examinee that if you don't pass this exam that I'm about to administer to you, I'm aware of what's going to happen to you, which is a serious criminal act of murder. So what do you think that examinee, who's Cassie, is thinking? Not thinking about the issue, the jewelry. She's thinking, oh my God, my life is so much in jeopardy, this examiner better be spot on. So she testified, obviously she's alive, so obviously she allegedly passed this polygraph test, but for 5 days, ladies and gentlemen, that's also considered abduction. So this examiner, again, is part of a criminal activity of abduction. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that examiner can be found. And federal investigators, federal prosecutors need to go after that examiner, find out who that examiner is, and it's not hard. I have a suspicion who that examiner is, but needs to go after that examiner and clearly charge that examiner for unethical and being a conspiracy to a crime, okay, with P. Diddy. Because no professional examiner with the highest ethical standards would ever, one, tell someone who's about to be tested, hey, if you don't pass this test, you're about to be killed or whacked. That's number one. Number two is they're not going to be involved in any kind of organized criminal activity. So you have to ask yourself this, ladies and gentlemen. Number one, was that result given to Cassie the real results? Meaning, did she really pass? Or was he protecting her, number one? Or number two, did he really care about the results? And all he cared about was the amount of money, because I can promise you he was paid a shitload of money by P. Diddy or whoever paid him in that organization to administer these polygraph tests. So think about the amount of money that examiner received for administering polygraph tests to give the answers that P. Diddy wanted. He wanted closure for theft of his Cartier bracelet that he assumed she stole and other jewelry. And that examiner, after 5 days, think about that, the extent of polygraph testing an individual over and over and over again over a 5-day period, the stress level has got to be unreal. The other thing too, ladies and gentlemen, is Cassie's not the only person in that organization that said P. Diddy used a polygraph examiner, the same polygraph examiner, to test another associate within his organization in the same location for other issues. So that examiner obviously was doing what P. Diddy wanted for the amount of money, and it was all about money. And I'll repeat this again, ladies and gentlemen. Federal prosecutors, federal investigators, they have the know-how, they have the knowledge. It would be so easy to find out who that examiner is. And if you're listening and you're watching me, Mr. Polygraph Examiner, you know who you are. You did something wrong. You could be federally charged, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you're going to be coming at by FBI knocking on your door and saying, FBI, come with us. And you have a lot of information and a lot of answers to give to those FBIs for being part of a conspiracy to commit a crime, and you are part of it. So ladies and gentlemen, that's what I want to tell you about that part. But here's the other part that I want to tell you about this current event. All these naysayers that say polygraphs cannot be used in a court of law. Ladies and gentlemen, that was in a federal court, and that judge permitted Cassie and another individual to testify about being polygraph tested, and it was not stopped. It was not told you can't testify to that. They permitted it, and it's all over the internet, all over big time news outlets. So it's not like it's fake news, ladies and gentlemen. That judge permitted that testimony that that individual was allowed to say, and the words, I took a polygraph test multiple times. The only thing that was not given was the name of the polygraph examiner, because she did not remember the name, or maybe he gave a false name, or she wasn't told the name, but she gave descriptions. And remember, detail is true, detail is truth, and she gave details. It was an abandoned building in Midtown Manhattan, and it was an office building that was probably owned or rented by P. Diddy. They took her there multiple times, and she described it to a T in court. That's detail. That's true. I believe Cassie over anyone else right now. She was tested by an unethical, horrible polygraph examiner, and that examiner needs to be exposed for who he was. And I say he because she said it was a male. So ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of investigators out there that listen to me. You need to find out who he is and expose him for who he really is yourself. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Have you been accused of one of the following in your life, such as infidelity, custody matters, CPS investigations, or serious criminal matters that you're currently being investigated for? At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we have been helping thousands of individuals for over 24 years, no matter who you are or what you have been accused of, with the highest accuracy, integrity, and overall compassion to everyone's needs. We are not your typical polygraph or lie detection service. At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we are certified experts recognized in courts throughout the country, and we stand by our promise to give you full closure and all your needed answers. Call at 757-495-1301 and visit our website at www.executiveprotectiongrp.com to get started. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I just spoke about an unethical way of administering a polygraph. However, the courts allowed that testimony to enter into the court of law, and that's not going anywhere in that trial. So let's talk about why it is so prevalent that people constantly say polygraphs are not admitted into court. Yet I'm going to tell you today that polygraph examinations are, in fact, allowed on a case-by-case to be admitted into a court of law, and how. You've all heard that polygraphs aren't admitted into court. You've heard it over and over. I can't tell you how many times I hear it in my profession, or even asked on a daily basis, can I use this in a court of law? Am I able to use this for my case? And I always tell them, yes, but you have to do it a certain way, or you have to have an attorney that's familiar, and I'm going to get into it in a minute so that you understand. But there is reasons why polygraphs are not admitted, and this is where the myths come into play. One, people say it's pseudoscience, or it's mumbo jumbo, or it's a flip of a coin. That is not true, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. The other issue about polygraph tests and why it's not admitted is, one, let's just say polygraphs were admitted just flat out, where I'm a polygraph examiner and I come into the courts and I say, John told the truth or Sally lied. Guess what? There would be no need for any jurors, and there'd be hardly any reason to have a lot of attorneys. And so that would be one reason why polygraphs are not admitted freely every single day. That's why they're admitted on a case-by-case basis. And just like every evidence that's ever accepted and admitted into court, the judge has the ultimate say as to what's admitted. That means testimony, that means hard evidence, paperwork, documentation, that means physical evidence, means if a cup was used to hurt someone, or cell phone text messages, whatever is going to be admitted into court of law as evidence for a case. Both sides, both prosecutor and defense, will argue whether it is relevant or not relevant, and then the presiding judge, whether it's a male or female judge, they have the ultimate say as to whether they're going to allow it to enter into court, and they're going to see whether or not, if it is a jury trial, whether or not the jurors are going to be able to get that evidence and to consider that evidence for rendering a result of guilt or no guilt. So when it comes to polygraph testing, ladies and gentlemen, this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to show you right now, this is what's not admitted ever in a court of law. Charts. Ladies and gentlemen, these are what's called polygraph charts. If you can see it, and what I call them, and you can call them the squiggly lines. Okay? You see the squiggly lines, ladies and gentlemen? This is what's not ever entered or admitted into a court of law. And you may ask why. One, it is science. Not pseudoscience, but it is science. And it would take forever to sit in that stand and explain what those lines and what they mean and everything, and it would be extremely confusing. And then you would have to then hire experts upon experts upon experts, and its cost would not be cost effective for the defendant or the prosecution to have and render what those charts mean. So in a polygraph, when someone says polygraphs are not admitted, that's what's not admitted into a court of law. Words, reports, ladies and gentlemen. That is what's admitted into a court of law. The polygraph report that is and says everything that was done in the examination from start to finish, and the professional opinion of that polygraph examiner. And in order for that report to be entered into evidence, that examiner must testify to what was written and what was said, so that it is not considered hearsay, which means the examinee, meaning the defendant or a witness, can't say that John took a polygraph test or someone else said something in the polygraph, because that would be hearsay. I, as an expert polygraph examiner and court certified, would have to say, on such and such a date, John came to my office and was interviewed, and this is what was said, this is what the questions were asked, and this is my professional opinion. And of course, the prosecution would then ask me questions, the defense attorney would then ask me questions back and forth, and maybe the judge would say, I object, or, whatever the judge would allow and not allow. That's what's permitted in a court of law, and I say this, and only this: not all reports are accepted, and not all polygraph examinations are admitted into court. It all depends. And I will say this: it is up to you as an individual, whatever you're going through, whatever the important matter you're going through. If your attorney is smart and wants you to take a polygraph test, then that means your attorney is familiar with how to get evidence, not polygraph tests, ladies and gentlemen, but get evidence submitted into a court of law. Also, if your attorney is asking you to take a polygraph test, that attorney is smart because they want to use every tool, every option, and every avenue to help their client in their case. And when an attorney immediately poo-poos and shuts down and denies you, the client, that you shouldn't take a polygraph test, what I say is shame on that attorney, because they're hurting you and potentially they're hurting themselves, because what happens if you go take a polygraph test and you come out very, very well in that examination and some information comes out of that examination that could ultimately clear you in your matter, in your case, that could potentially help your attorney present it. But if your attorney tells you no and you don't take one, now it's based on what sometimes? Your word against the other person's word, or it's your word against what the prosecution has and their witnesses. And sometimes if you take a polygraph test, now you are one step higher than they are, because now you have evidence, a polygraph report from, and I say this, a certified court experienced examiner, not some other examiner that's never testified in a court of law, or some other unlicensed or jackleg examiner out there that just wants your money, but an experienced examiner. You have something that's tangible, that's evidence that you're able to present, where these other witnesses, it's just their word of mouth. And as you know, and I know, that people lie for a lot of reasons. 1, to hurt people. 2, they lie to gain something for themselves. 3, they lie to better themselves or to cause serious havoc upon you. And that's why polygraphs are going to be around forever and ever and ever, no matter what the naysayers say, no matter what people say, get rid of it, no matter what. It's been around for 104 years as of today, and it's going to continue to be around for a long time. And the fact is, it's getting better and better and better with more technology, with better education, and professional examiners. I can say, and this is me, I can tell you, I've helped more people get closure, get not convicted, get out of prison, and if they didn't take a polygraph test, they would be in worse shape than they are today. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not stupid. I know people have failed when they shouldn't have failed, and I know there have been people that have passed when they shouldn't have passed. And I'll say it, and I will repeat it 1,000 times on my podcast. It is based on inexperience, poor examiners, lackadaisical examiners that hurt and ruin people's lives. And that's where you get people that say examinations given by examiners or polygraph tests or lie detector tests, whatever you want to call it, shouldn't be allowed because they are the people that have had their lives ruined. And I understand that, and I'm empathetical about that. However, those kind of individuals, you can go and get retested with a professional examiner and find out that you are the ones that were telling the truth all along, and move on and get your integrity back. And it's not you that was lying. It's not you that you're being told that you're a drug user or whatever. It's the examiner that ruined your life. You didn't ruin your life. And that's what I'm trying to get at. People rush in everything they do in life. They rush to buy a car and the car craps out and they didn't do enough research. People rush to get clothing on, cheap off the rack, and then, they go ahead and wash it in the washing machine, and then all of a sudden it just, fizzles and shreds, and it, they bought it cheap. Same with polygraph examiners, ladies and gentlemen. People tend to rush to get their issues resolved, but they don't do enough research and they don't check these examiners. All they care about is how cheap are you going to charge me? And that's who they rush to get. They don't check for credentials. They don't check online to see if this examiner, whether it's a male or female, has been sued, whether they facilitated a crime themselves. And you can look online and see that, ladies and gentlemen. I can repeat, and I'm not, because I don't want to get sued for defamation, but there are examiners I can repeat right now, okay, that have been sued, that have committed crimes, and yet they're still out there and nothing happens to them, okay, when it comes to still performing polygraph examinations. So do your due diligence and do research, look at reviews, and stay away from the poor, idiotic examiners that are harming people's lives. That's why people say polygraphs are not admitted, but they really can be if you get the right polygraph examiner. Ladies and gentlemen, this stack in this folder, and I can show you, is full of subpoenas, both state, local, here's the federal, United, I'll cover the name, United States District Court. That's a federal subpoena right there, ladies and gentlemen. I get them all the time, okay, to go to court to testify for polygraph examinations that I have conducted. So when people tell me, and I laugh, when people tell me that polygraphs are not admitted to court, I just chuckle and say, well, that's funny. I'm going to court next week. Or look on my website and look at all the attorneys that have ever used me and continue to use me, because those are the smart attorneys that want to help their clients by finding out information more to help their client resolve their matter and get their client clear from these false allegations. And there's so many people that have been falsely accused. It's unreal. Unreal. People lie on people all the time. And what happens is, and you've seen it, who can lie the best? And then what happens is, if you tell a good lie, then if the police or someone, magistrate or whatever, believes those lies, that's when the warrants come out and you get charged. Because you don't have to have a big preponderance of evidence when someone goes and tells a story. You just have to be believed enough to go get a warrant against someone. And that's where a lot of people tend to lose custody. Okay, that's when they tend to go to CPS, make this elaborate stories. They go get domestic violence charges. And then you notice when you go to court, they get dropped. Why? Because they know they're lying and they fabricate it because they were mad or angry at the time. That's what and why polygraph examinations are so important in people's lives. And when you get the right polygraph examiner, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you this, your life is changed 110%. You get closure, you get your integrity back, you are told you're not lying, you're told you're not crazy, you're told you are telling the truth, and the other person is lying, gaslighting you, or whatever, and you are a victim of, let's say, sexual abuse or whatever is going through your life, that polygraph examiner, if they're anything and they're experienced and they really truly believe and are passionate enough about their job and their career, they're there to help you, not ruin your life. And that's where I come into play, ladies and gentlemen. I take my career so serious. I make life-altering decisions every single day. And do not think for 1 minute that I'm wanting to make someone's life worse when they come into my office than they are when they leave. It's not my job. My job is to give you clarity, closure, and for you to move on in life. I don't have to help anyone fail a polygraph test. You're going to fail it on your own by lying and holding back information. People pass by being open and honest. It's that simple. That's how you pass a polygraph test. You're not going to beat a professional examiner. I don't care what you do in life or what you read or what you see on the internet or whatever. You're not going to. I'll stand firm with that. And you can say whatever you want on TikTok, on YouTube, or wherever. You're not going to beat a professional examiner. And if you're trying, well, that's on you. But if you're there to help and clear your name or someone else's name, or you're there to help clear your children's name, a professional examiner like myself will do everything to get you your resolution. Thank you for listening. It means the world to me. You know how to reach me. If you want my number, give me a call, 757-495-1301, and I'll help you wherever you're at. Like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for listening. If you truly liked what you heard today, please be sure to rate the show, share with others, and subscribe for more episodes.